I am back. It feels good to be back, too. So, I had a couple of ideas. Very small ideas, but ideas nonetheless. Number one, I wanted to try doing the live stream basically without the timer being present this time. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the webcam be about that big. Yes, I did hear about that. I'll get to that in a second. I want to have the webcam maybe be a little bit bigger than I have in the past, just slightly. And then I think I'm going to not use the timer just because it's a little bit less clutter on the screen. I feel like that's generally like a much more easy to deal with viewing experience. Then what else I wanted to do was do the custom track mode in Retro Rewind with the original custom track designs. I saw TWD put out a video yesterday. I didn't mean to hit one player, where he went through some of the custom tracks that are in this distribution pack, and those custom tracks aren't too bad insofar as like the designs and like whether or not they are noob friendly. In fact, some of them are based off of older custom tracks, which means that, ironically enough, they don't succumb to some of the design flaws of the tracks that are in CTGP, which is to say a lot of them don't have these, like, make or break shroomless shortcuts. I think I saw one or two of them that had a shroomless cut, and each time it was a pretty small shortcut, and you give up an item to do it. Like, you don't get an item box. So, let's try custom versus this time. And we will pick... not Birdo. Let's pick somebody else. Let's pick Hammer Bro. This is a classic custom skin. Yeah, it's custom tracks that have those shroomless shortcuts forces a certain very sweaty, very competitive adjacent playstyle, which I don't like very much. The margin of error is so small in, like, the frames where you press a certain button. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many inputs that are, like, set play, basically. But in Mario Kart Wii, and that's not very satisfying to me. I like having to play against other people, thank you. And being in a sort of jostling crowd of carts bumping around. You know? Big fan of that. So, that's going to be this stream. I also just realized, as I was talking about the webcam border, there was another thing that I intended to do with the live stream chat, which is that there's a sort of abrupt cutoff where the text just kind of disappears at the top. What I wanted to do with that is basically try to find a way to have a gradient so that you don't see a, like, just line sort of cutting, like, slicing the text in half when it gets to the top of the chat box, but rather so that there could be, like, a gradual fade out, like maybe about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way up, it starts to dissipate into translucent and then transparent territory, and then, like, when you get to the top, it's like, okay, the letters just faded out, so it's nice and smooth like that. Like Games for Freedom with playstyles, it doesn't mean you can't improve on it. Yeah, for sure. Like, you know, I mean, that's part of the nice bit about Worldwide's on a very versatile track. You could have really good lines, and that'll get you places, but it's not going to make your whole game plan. You have to have a multifaceted playstyle. You have to have solid fundamentals. You know? Let me pull up this, already got that. So, you guys remember how I was talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court election last stream? If you ever find something annoying, whenever you search something up, you have to be as short as possible. Oh, yeah, like with search terms? Yeah, that's annoying. Like in Google search, it won't know what you're saying if you type something that's too long. Yeah, I get that. I talked about the Supreme Court election yesterday. Not yesterday, day before. And yesterday, the election in Wisconsin actually happened. And I said, how sweet would it be if Elon Musk... Okay, it seems like nobody's online on the custom verses. If Elon Musk pumped millions of dollars, tens of millions, in fact. I think he spent something like $20 million on the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. And committed lottery fraud, committed election fraud, committed bribery, and he still lost. And it wasn't close either. It's not like this was a particularly close election. It was a it was like 56 to 44 percentage points or something like that. And like that's with the support of the richest man in the world and the entire like national far right infrastructure to influence the election, and they still can't win the election. So, you know, worst timeline averted, actually, which is great. You love to see it. Yeah, massive L, R.I.P. Bozo, and this has the effect of basically that the fascists seem to be running out of juice a little bit. I've explained this before, or I've touched on this before. Money can buy a lot of things. It can't buy people power. You know, you can buy elected officials, you can buy segments of an institution, you can even capture an entire government with money and with power in the form of like social connections or whatever. Yeah, that's why they're trying to make AI robots and all sorts of shit having to do with AI, so they can kind of replace people power. But money cannot buy people power. It can go a long way to pacify people power. It can try to disable people power. It cannot buy that people power for itself. And that's what we saw in that election. It was literally the money versus the people. And, you know, $1 is not one vote. One vote is one vote, in fact. Yeah, you know, it's good to see them running out of juice now, because we're only 2.5 months into the Trump administration, and it's already at a point where the public backlash is mounting to fever pitch. Like, it's all over the news, the degree to which, you know, they are running into roadblocks in elections, in town halls, in lawmaking, in whatever, right? And theoretically, they do have unchecked power if they can muster the political capital to do their shit, right? Like, if, you know, they can do the tariffs pretty much unilaterally, they can pass a budget pretty much unilaterally, they can destroy the administrative state, and it's going to take decades to recover from that. But in just a year, everybody's going to be soured on fascism. Nobody is going to approve of what the government is doing. And they're going to remember that. It might not stop the government from doing those things. And that's the object for which we have to be urgent and active. But there's nothing that they can do at this point to make people approve of the objectively horrible things that they're doing. And when I say objectively, I mean in the sense that if you consider suffering to be bad, then objectively they're doing bad things. Internet speed has poisoned the Republicans. Yeah, they're trying to go fast with their agenda, precisely because the internet exists and because information can transmit so readily. But if they go fast, that just means people see what they're doing really fast. You know? It would be probably the best timeline if we only have about a year of this, or like 2 years, and then, you know, some kind of FDR-esque figures arise on the left, and you get a return to like Keynesian social democracy and a transitory state towards socialism. But that's being very optimistic, and honestly, I see this dragging out for much, much longer than that. But regardless, it is good that it's going to drag out without the approval of the public. That's a really, really important step in the process, because if the public like approves of a fascist regime, that allows them to get away with more, and it means that society will be damaged for longer because people aren't going to recognize some of the stuff as damaging, if that makes sense. Like, if people approved of the government cutting Medicare and Social Security, then even if the fascists are defeated and leave power, people might not so readily go to create a new version of like Medicare and Social Security, if that makes sense. It's precisely because people view that as bad now and are associating that with the current government that, you know, that's possible. Maybe this will be Germany 2.0. Maybe they were definitely aiming for 1930s Germany. They might get late 18th century France instead, which is only fitting, I think. Oh jeez, I hope racing isn't too hard with my busted ass finger. Before I get to talking about the thing that Cryoraptor brought up with that grapist, to avoid the censors, I guess. I want to go through some fun stuff that I did. God dang it! I finally got a new cooler on my CPU. Whenever I do like video editing and stuff, whenever I have to render a video, I run into this annoying thing where it'll be rendering fine. Like, I never really hit issues where like the render gets corrupted or anything like that. Thankfully, I don't have that problem. But what did happen was that like my CPU would sort of throttle. Like, it was getting too hot when the renders were happening and stuff like that. Because I was using the like little default AMD Wraith, what is it, Spire? Or something like that, cooler. And it's a decent cooler. It's good enough to handle like a Ryzen 7, which is a pretty heavy-duty CPU for gaming and stuff like that. It keeps it cool when it's gaming, and I've never really had any problems there. But when you do something more intensive that uses the CPU's full like core count and a lot of different functions, like rendering, you start getting a much heavier load. So I was like, okay, I need to replace this. And I had another cooler, a Noctua, Hawktua, more like, haha, got him, low profile cooler, which is like one of the best in the business, apparently. And a couple days ago, yeah, on Monday, after I streamed on Monday, I did this. I had dinner, then I like opened up my computer and went through the process of taking off the old cooler, putting the new one on. It was pretty involved, took about an hour and a half. But then when I was setting my computer back up, I had to remove the motherboard and put it back in order to do stuff with the cooler. And I only realized when I was plugging my computer in right here that I had reseated the motherboard ever so slightly incorrectly. The standoffs and whatever were fine. It didn't damage it in any way. But the shield plate, at the, you know how every motherboard has this little shield in front of the USB ports and whatever, so you can't like stick your finger into the motherboard. That had been aligned slightly wrong. There was a little protruding piece of metal. It's one of those things that's meant to like, it's kind of like a clip, a metal clip that holds a certain port in place or whatever. It was kind of aligned wrong, and that prevented me from plugging something in. One of the USB ports was blocked because of that. And so in my infinite wisdom, in relatively sketchy lighting conditions at like 8:30 p.m., I decided, you know what? I can probably just kind of jimmy it, like wiggle it back and forth, and it'll get out of the way. And I tried that for about a minute, and it didn't really work. And I was like, ah, shit, you know, that's not working. And then I come back, I go into the bathroom to wash my hands, I think, and I see that there's like blood all over my finger. I had cut my index finger, my left index, so deep that it was one of those cuts that was so deep it didn't hurt and I didn't feel it. And I was like, oh shit, that's a bad cut. Like, if you get cut and it stings, that's a good sign. That means it's a shallow cut, and having a band-aid on it for like half a day will probably be enough to to heal it up, right? But you know, my finger was bleeding all over the place. I had to rush to get a bandage, and I only took it off to like take a shower at the beginning of each day, and then I had to get like a new band-aid after that. And I'm still wearing a band-aid on my finger, and it has made it a little bit more annoying to do certain things. Hasn't really inhibited my ability to function. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing like I'm probably okay on the race course as well. Like it doesn't hurt any or anything. But yeah, I cut my finger pretty nasty. And I was like, oh shit. But it was all part of the experience. Because, you know, I actually did, yesterday, after I cut myself, I went back and opened up my computer again, took the motherboard out, and just reseated it, made double sure that, the motherboard was seated properly, and that all the USB ports were not, like, blocked or anything, that I wasn't going to cut myself on anything. And so all's well that ends well, and I still have, like, a little band-aid on my finger. Feels like a design flaw. It feels less painful the worse it is. Yeah. I think, it, like... I don't know. There's not much I can say in the way of, like, whether it's a design flaw or whatever. Because, like... people weren't designed all at once. Shit happened, like, very, very slowly. I don't know how that happened, though. Slashed my thumb open with a knife on Saturday. Oof. Trying to open plant food. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. Just needed a band-aid. Yeah. And that's you know, thankfully with my finger, it wasn't any worse than that as well. You know, just a band-aid does the trick here. I just have to keep it on my finger for probably another couple of days. You know? But then after I put the new cooler on, I had an opportunity to test. I actually rendered the Marine Le Pen video is actually already rendered. I had an opportunity to test whether the new cooler was any good. And it seemed like it wasn't at first. And I was like, man, that's a shame. Because I still got these points where the CPU really started to chug and slow down. And be underutilized as a product of it, like, overheating. But then I was like, nah, you know what? I actually think that if this cooler, which is much better than the default cooler, and is mounted more securely, is also struggling, I think it's an issue of the fans not actually ramping up when the CPU gets hot. And sure enough, I opened up, I got a open source software that can control your fans and stuff, the fan curves on your computer, because I'm too lazy to go into the BIOS, thank you. As it so happens, the fan was not fully ramping up. It would only ever top out at like 70 or 80% speed when the CPU was getting really, really hot. And so I went in and adjusted the fan curve of the cooler fan and the other like case fans, so that when the CPU starts to heat up, the fans really start going into overdrive to cool it down. Because, you know, I could give a shit about the noise if I'm doing something like rendering a video. That's like the only circumstance where the CPU in my computer gets so hot that I would really need that kind of cooling power. And I'm okay with it making noise there, because when I'm gaming, it never like gets to that point anyways. Like, the noise isn't that bad. You know? At this point, there should be a tutorial video whenever you buy a computer and you turn it on the first time. Yeah, I mean, like, when I built my computer, and when I helped my friend build a computer, I was going off of knowledge that I learned from the, what is it, Linus Tech Tips, like, tutorial video for building a PC. I've since stopped watching Linus Tech Tips for various reasons, but nonetheless, that, you know, that tutorial was really good. And, you know, I've been able to rely on it when I'm doing anything like, to my computer, particularly. And I remember a lot of stuff in it. Like, I remember the finer points of, like, yeah, just make sure that your power supply is off. So I don't have to boot it up every time now, which is nice. You know? But yeah, if you're building a computer, you're definitely going to need a tutorial. Yeah. Although, if you're, like, for anybody that's like, oh, yeah, you know, I want to get a new computer, but I don't feel too comfortable about building it, that's fine, because, even though sometimes a pre-built computer is somewhat more expensive than a computer that you assemble yourself, the cost can actually vary, and it's not usually that much more expensive if you're looking at something with the same specifications, you know? In fact, there was a period of time not long after I built this PC, and probably it's gonna happen soon as well, where the price of certain computer components, particularly graphics cards, got so expensive that it was actually more cost-effective to buy a computer that was pre-assembled, because a lot of companies have an advantage that, like, individual consumers don't. They can buy parts in bulk, and oftentimes if you buy stuff in bulk, it comes at a discount. Or either way, it's like less, even if it doesn't come at a discount, it's like less money per part than if you bought it individually, because you'd have to ship an individual unit, you know? So, like, the kind of economy of scale there kind of benefits those companies who build computers just en masse. And so, because of a bunch of different things, that being one of them, if you're ever in the market for a computer, it's not a bad idea to just buy one that's already assembled and you don't have to do much to. Sounds like food. When you make it, it's less expensive. Yeah, but then, like, you know, there are certain circumstances where this doesn't really happen with food, but it does with PC parts. There are certain circumstances where the individual ingredients or components become so expensive that the finished product is cheaper by comparison. Has America ever been at war with Canada? Yes, once, in 1812. Because Canada was, at the time, still a colonial nation under the British Crown. I think they're still part of the Commonwealth, but yeah, America and Canada were at war as part of the War of 1812, a war that America kind of got its ass kicked in. But Britain, funnily enough, Britain actually had no interest in reclaiming the United States into its colonial empire, for the same reason that Britain kind of let America win the Revolutionary War to begin with, which is also the same reason that the Revolutionary War even started, because Britain was in massive debt. Britain had been fighting France in Europe at the time, like, not too long ago before the Revolution, and definitely, like, during the War of 1812, you know, they were at war with France and stuff, and, you know, they're racking up debts and shit, and if Britain tried to reabsorb America into the British Empire, that would have been extremely expensive. You know, just on administrative costs alone, not to even consider the mass discontent that would be there for America having been independent already for a couple of decades at that point, and then, like, to suddenly be reabsorbed, you know? Opponent said just get a loan to buy a factory. Oh yeah, was that you're on Brook? I think I remember that debate. It's one of the first debates I watched from Vosh. Yeah, just go into debt, forehead. But anyways, now I can talk briefly about what was it? This case. Oh, Ice Cube exists. Force ice to... Yes, condensed ice. Yeah. It is possible for ice to be not cold. Which is extremely bizarre to say, but the way that ice forms, water in its solid form, regular ice, cold ice, is less dense than water. right? Because air gets trapped as it's freezing. It is possible to compress water so tightly that it forms into ice. Same chemical composition. It is just water in solid form, but it's not cold. It would be like incredibly dense. Physics is funny. Yeah, physics is fucking weird, dude. It's pretty goofy. No, I've been punished for throwing a banana at Mr. Nice Guy. I really like this track. I'm a big enthusiast of all the desert tracks. We'll just use this here. Hot ice forms on some exoplanets with very dense atmospheres. Yeah, that's right. I've heard of and there are some like planets outside the solar system in like very distant systems where like it's speculated that if they have like if they're composed entirely of liquid water, it's possible they have like a core that is made of ice, but not cold ice, rather compressed ice, which would be like very hot, but also extremely dense and under a shitload of pressure, and that's like how it becomes ice, and that is super jarring, you know, to think about. Okay, I'm in first now. And yeah, I could have told you that was gonna happen. Oh, a shock. I see. I might win? I Alright. Usually when you get shocked at the end, there's like a million red shells, a blue shell, somebody comes blasting by in a bullet bill, but, you know, I just kind of creep forward with one parentheses, one banana, and I win. Anyways, what is this story about? Can we talk about the trade war? Yes, in just a second. I will. First, I want to see this thing that Cryoraptor sent. Medical student found guilty of rape will not be punished. And the judge was like, "Eh, he's just a little birthday boy." Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's fucked up, actually. That's one of the things about, like, the sort of gender divide in society that merits commenting on, is that, like, whenever a rape occurs, like, whenever sexual violence happens, it's usually women that are on the receiving end, which is a massive problem in and of itself, that this kind of extremely slated sexual violence exists. And then also that, like, perpetrators of the sexual violence, even when caught, are never punished, you know, like, or hardly ever punished. In fact, that was a big sticking point in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Brad Schimmel, the guy who Elon Musk was backing, has actually a known history of just kind of not pursuing sexual assault cases, you know, like not using rape kits to test, you know, to test whether women had been, like, raped definitively so they could use that in court later, not prosecuting accused assaulters and rapists and stuff like that. Like, a lot of judicial systems are, like, suspiciously lenient on people who are rapists or people who have committed sexual assault and shit like that, you know? Or Sparta was trained to be a gynecologist, so he would have intimate access to women. Yeah, that's pretty fucked up too. That's really fucked up because he would be in a position to do that more. That's one of the issues I'm not as well read on, but like honestly, I feel like you could probably assign a lot of the issue that like where this is coming from to us not having very good like mechanisms of educating people about consent, you know? And definitely for there not being that many consequences for like especially heinous acts of sexual violence, you know? Yeah, basically punishments for rape and sexual assault should be quite a bit heavier. And also people should be like, there should be more education specifically about what consent means. Not just in a sexual environment either. That's the environment where violating somebody's consent is actually like a pretty grievous offense against their rights. But like a lot of people just don't understand the concept of consent that well. That like you should get somebody's permission to do something. And you shouldn't be, like, super underhanded about it. It's not, like, if you want to get all philosophical edge case about it, you can make it complicated. But as an idea, it's pretty damn simple. You know? I don't know, it's pretty bad. It's pretty fucking bad. It's a whole can of worms that I would need to read more about in order to understand. Admittedly, I've said that, like, women's issues are something where I haven't read as much as certain other things, like, class issues. Probably because I feel like there are a lot of class issues that you could apply as applying disproportionately to women rather than men, because of like there's even like nowadays there are slight or not so slight imbalances economically between men and women and stuff like that. I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of just yapping. You know. But yeah, it's pretty bad that somebody was convicted. This guy was convicted of rape too. You know, like he for sure did it, and they were like, yeah, but he's just a birthday boy studying to be a gynecologist. So you know, we're not gonna punish him. It's like, oh, great. Wasn't even that long ago women couldn't have bank accounts. Yeah, that's true. It wasn't that long ago that women like needed permission from their husbands to open up bank accounts. Like the second class citizenry shit like runs surprisingly recently, even in most like Western countries where, you know, one of the disingenuous talking points is like, oh, women have so many rights here. It's like, well, not really. Yeah, they have so many rights. What are you talking about? They're not literally slaves. That's true. Okay. So I'm telling people to take away their rights? Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that the right wing quietly incorporated revoking the 19th Amendment, which is notably the amendment that allows women to vote. It's a constitutional amendment that was passed in the year 1920. 105 years ago, women got the right to vote in the United States. And, 105 years later, here we are today with conservatives kind of quietly beginning to incorporate the rolling back even of those rights into their platforms and shit. Those ones are definitely grifters. I mean, yeah, the whole, like, conservative tent in America is, like, more or less a big grift, but, like, those ones grift to the end of just, like, having power over, like, lots of different people, and it's possible. In fact, I would bet money that even for a lot of grifters, one of the few positions they genuinely hold is that they hate women. Like, it is common to basically everybody on the right, especially the far right, that they fucking hate women. You know? Like, I don't think the grift is necessary for that, because they actually hate women. You know? And in kind of a different way from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, right? Old school misogynists, who at the time would not be considered misogynists, but, like, you know, old school chauvinists, I guess, enjoyed the company of women, right? In a certain measure, acknowledge that, like, yeah, women are people. you know what I mean? Something, something, ladies man something, you know? But, like, nowadays, a lot of right-wingers genuinely hate women as a concept. It's like the incelification of people, particularly men. You know, there are some femcells out there too, I guess. But, like, yeah, the Andrew Tate bros genuinely want violence to be enacted on women, both as a personal and ideological matter. They're just pro-violence against women because they hate women. Like, they don't even want to be around women. You know? They are in the most proper sense of the term, misogynists. The term misogynist back in the day, in like the 19th century, mind you, there were people who you could call misogynist as an insult. People who were, by modern standards, very misogynistic, would call other people misogynist because they were, like, literally incapable of functioning normally around women. You know, the stereotype about how, like, women are hysterical and emotional, haha, they're incapable of being rational. A classical misogynist is somebody that gets so irrational and hysterical around women that they, like, can't contain themselves. Like, they're incapable of being a normal human being if there's a woman in the vicinity. And that's kind of what we're seeing with all the Andrew Tate types, you know? They are returning to tradition with a V, and by returning to tradition, I mean, like, being so frothing at the mouth that they can't talk, never mind talking to women, they can't even talk about women and like, be normal. Basically, Anakin Skywalker. Even Anakin Skywalker is not this bad, which is incredible. You know? Like, with somebody like Anakin Skywalker, yeah, he can be, like, he's flies off the handle a lot, but that's not a gender-specific thing. He's just like that, you know? Like, his lightsaber just did that, you know? If he was, like, a classical misogynist, he would be normal most of the time, except when he's around women, and then he would, like, genuinely start tweaking. Meant like he can't even talk to women like humans now. At least in... Oh yeah, in Attack of the Clones. Okay, I'm gonna be real, I kind of didn't really consider that. I was just thinking because, like, Attack of the Clones and the prequel trilogy is just so badly written. I don't usually give it the time of day when we're thinking about, like, dialogue and shit. I was thinking about how, like, he gets really mad whenever somebody else is, like, friends with Padme or something. Like, he's the jealous type, you know? But that's more like in the Clone Wars show. I gotta start using this, because I think... The fuck? You guys heard that? That was the fire alarm. Okay, I think we're good. It does that every now and again, I think. I don't know why. Yeah, just get that out of here. There's a little episode where Skywalker was jealous. I think I remember that episode. Is that the episode where... Might be the battery saying it's about to die? No, it's fine. I don't think these are like battery-powered smoke alarms. Or if they have a battery, it's an internal battery. That's not the type that needs to be like recharged, if that makes sense. Yeah, that episode. I remember that. There are even people to this moment, they're like, America isn't going to do tariffs. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Trump coined the April 2nd tariffs, which is today, by the way, the Liberation Day tariffs. Yeah, no, it's plugged. The smoke alarm's plugged into the wall. Like it's connected to the wiring of the house. Like it's not a portable battery unit. That'd be really bad. For some reason, Trump termed today's tariffs the Liberation Day tariffs, presumably because the tariffs cause the liberation of all the Wall Street bankers from this mortal coil as they jump out the window on the 30th story. You know, as has happened in decades past. Yeah, we will be liberated from happiness. The bankers will be liberated from this earthly plane, and so forth. Nobody actually knows whether Trump is going to do these rounds, like this round of tariffs completely. There are some indications, because they've made an occasion out of this day particularly, you know, there's some indication that they'll probably go through with it. But I want to remind people that, like, even though they kind of backed out of the tariffs the last couple times they did them, last month and the month before, they didn't 100% back out either time. In February, there were some tariffs that went through on China, and in March, there were some tariffs that went through on China and Canada and Mexico. It wasn't all of them, but it was enough of them for the pain to start rolling in, you know? So it's possible a similar thing happens this time, where they hard commit to the point that, like, even I think, oh man, they're probably going to go through with it, and then they just kind of pull back arbitrarily. While keeping some of the tariffs in place. And I think the reason that they do that is they want to kind of, like, confuse people enough that they don't know what to be mad at with regards to the tariffs. Does that make sense? Because, like, either way, their objective, regardless of whether they do the tariffs or not, their objective is to crash the stock market and destroy the economy, because then if they do that, they can buy the dip. You know, like the meme buying the dip. They can actually do that. They have enough money, the oligarchs. And then when the economy rebounds, since they bought the dip, they would own more of the economy. This is a project of consolidation, and they're destroying the entire economy in order to do it, because that's kind of necessary at this stage. Yeah, look, 1 hour ago, Reuters, Trump to impose sweeping tariffs. I guess I could go through a couple of the details. I've explained, again, why tariffs are bad. I don't want to have to go through that again. but I will if I have to. Let's see, escalating global trade tensions. Can't wait for Reuters to fucking edit this article after the fact to make Trump look good. Once they decide not to do the tariffs, actually, and they're like, you know what? Glorious President Trump is taking a bold new controversial initiative to hold our allies to account by kind of doing tariffs, sort of, sometimes. You know? I think these are, particularly what I've heard these referred to as are the reciprocal tariffs. I think these are the, basically like, oh, there are countries that have tariffs on American products, which is true. There are some countries in I believe, the third world, and even in other more developed parts of the world. I think there are some things that American goods are tariffed in, like, Europe or whatever. But it's, like, selective. And Trump was like, can't do that. You see, that's it's not good for the American economy. We got to have trade balance, perfectly balanced, they say, as all things should be, right? Like that's what he's gunning for, because you know, being a global hegemon is definitely when you have an exact trade balance with every other country, and not when you're like running such a massive deficit that any country that relies on you for trade would be fucked if you bankrupt on any of your loans. I'm being facetious. America's a global debtor. We leverage our position to hell and back, which is good for our economic standing. Look, the point is, the administration is incompetent and they're doing tariffs, and that's, like, bad. What are they tariffing? You deemed today Liberation Day. Okay, great, good. I don't fucking know why. Again, probably because liberating the bankers from this mortal coil. You know, very good. Thank you. Nice. Oh, he actually got powed over the... Did he get powed off? That's fucked up. That was a really good pow against that guy specifically. What are the tariffs on? The new duties, which would undo... duties! Many such cases, which would undo trade arrangements in place since 1947, are due to take effect immediately after Trump announces them. So he hasn't even announced them? Do you think they're going to live stream Donald Trump's funeral? Yes. A separate 25% global tariff on auto imports will take effect on April 3rd. Okay, so nobody knows. Nobody knows what the tariffs are, or when they're going to happen, or if they're going to happen. This is by design. Trump once called the word tariff the most beautiful word in the dictionary. My favorite word, makes me feel like a big man, like a big boy, like the big boy that I am. I love tariffs. I love to put tariffs on everybody. Allies, enemies, mostly allies. Actually, not you know, not Russia or China. Well, I'll put tariffs on China, but not Russia. Russia. Europe, they've been so unfair to us. Europe and Canada, they've been so unfair to the United States. We got to put tariffs on them. Yeah, no one knows what the... yeah, fucking Donald Trump has tariffs and refuses to take his medication is what we should all be getting from this, right? Like, watch the fuck out. You know? It's like... Is he going to crash the fuck out, or isn't he? And whatever the answer is, everybody, like, shits themselves regardless. Like, it doesn't matter what the answer is, because everybody shits themselves. Just the thought of the crash out being, like, biblical is enough to, like, partially create the effect of the tariffs, you know? Because you think about, like, economic imports and exports, right? This is a globalized economy. Businesses rely on the consistency of knowing what something is going to cost about like a couple months in advance, at least in a general sense. They got to know like, okay, this costs about this much, so we can order this much and it'll have about this kind of effect on our budget, right? Like if you're an automaker in America, just to use an example, right? And you get steel, you get raw materials from other countries, oftentimes, you know, they do, a lot of third world countries are responsible for, you know, like, resource production and that sort of stuff. They need to know how much that steel and aluminum and rubber costs, you know? And if the tariffs are constantly hanging over everybody's heads as an inconsistent threat that, like, will they, won't they? Haha, funny. Nobody knows what steel or aluminum or fucking rubber or lumber or whatever else that we get from other countries is going to cost, you know? And for that matter, nobody knows what material that's sourced from the United States is going to cost, because the global economy is so integrated with itself. Every country is so integrated into the economy with every other country that even when there's stuff that's sourced domestically that is used in domestic production to make product domestically, that stuff interacts with global trade networks at some point or another. In the process of getting lumber domestically, there are lumber operations that happen, you know, resource gathering operations that happen in the United States. We have a lumber industry. You have to have trucks. You have to have factories. You have to have stuff that is oftentimes sourced, at least in part, from other countries. You know, you have to have equipment. You have to have tools, you know, some of which could be like made in China or made in like Southeast Asia or whatever. You got to have company uniforms that are presumably made in like Southeast Asia somewhere, because that's where a lot of textile production happens. You know, at every stage of the process, you're probably running up against some kind of element of global trade. That's why when I say that tariffs affect everything, they do affect everything, right? We're putting tariffs on the people that do all the production. That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. It's not some like, oh, short-term pain for long-term gain shit. There's no long-term gain, because the long-term gain would be, oh yeah, we develop our own industry to the point that we're ready to enter the world stage as a economic predator rather than economic prey. The problem is America is already an economic predator. We're already the country that does the exploiting. At least we were. What the tariffs would do would be put us back in the position where America is one of the countries getting colonized, right? And now, obviously, this is part of a very flawed dynamic of global capitalism, that there are some countries that, like, get just brutally exploited for all their shit. Nobody gets paid for anything. There's slave labor, etc., you know? But, like, the point is to highlight that's bad, and the Trump administration is trying to do that to this country on purpose, you know? That's what these tariffs are. That's why they're so bad. And that's why even the threat of them contributes to that. Because, you know, with that instability, economic activity is going to be erratic at best. It's going to slow down. There's going to be a stagflation, where massive inflation is coupled with like a extreme lack of economic activity, you know? And because America is now here immediately after having been in such a dominant position, we're going to take the entire global economy with us. Does that make sense? You know, if you're Nicaragua, if you are a Democratic Republic of the Congo, if you're Sudan, if you are like you know, Cambodia or Vietnam, tariffs can be a good idea. They can be workable if you have industries that you like have in mind that you specifically want to develop to protect against foreign investment. There's a use case for tariffs. All of those use cases revolve around you not being the United States, the wealthiest country to ever have existed in history, you know? If he does the exact amount as he says, it's going to be like D-Day. Yeah, it's going to be bad. Like, really, really bad. Doesn't matter if you don't live in America, it'll still affect you and make your life worse. Yes, but it's going to be most severe, I think, for the United States. Like, the stuff that's going to affect other countries is mostly the stuff that Trump has already done. Ruining the trade relationships just by announcing opposition to Europe and Canada and destroying U.S. aid. You know, the United States used to be the largest spender in the world for international, like, humanitarian aid. We used to spend more money than almost any other country in the world. In fact, I think than any other country in the world on humanitarian aid. That on its own has some flaws, and of course it's like small peanuts compared to the rest of the American budget, but Trump took that, the administration rather, Trump and his oligarch friends took that and were like, yeah, let's not spend money on this anymore. No more foreign aid, sorry guys. I was like, why are they giving us all the money? Well, the thing is, like, I described the United States' position as a global... Oh, yeah, why are they not giving us all the money? Yeah. No, I think that he doesn't... Like, I don't think he genuinely thinks that the United States as, like, the whole country would benefit from tariffs. I think he thinks, or he knows, that it's just going to be him and his oligarch friends that will benefit. You know, short-term pain for them. Remember... Tariffs make the oligarchs slightly poorer in the interim as well, right? But on the other side of it, like I said, they own more of the economy as a proportion. It's about relative profit. They, relatively speaking, profit when you compare them to the rest of the world, and especially the working class. That's the purpose of this. They're willing to make everything worse for everyone, including themselves, if they are further ahead of the working class by comparison afterwards. The rich are class conscious? Yes, this is a manifestation of the class consciousness of the owning class, you know? Is that they're trying to cement their position, not even necessarily wealth in an absolute sense. There are so many things, so many good things that you could do that would increase everybody's wealth, right? That you could do to still have the like neoliberal ass rising tide that supposedly lifts all boats and shit like that. There is still room for that in a way that like can solve, like can bring wealth to the entirety of society, including the like people who are already wealthy, and at the same time it like slightly helps to redress income inequality. But they're not interested in that. That's like that world that, you know, that, oh, rising tide lifts all boats, it's possible for everybody to benefit, is what gave way to this. Does that make sense? Because they looked at that and they were like, yeah, but everybody benefits. What we want is not for everybody to benefit, but for us to benefit over the working class. We want to benefit from things more than the working class. That's why shit like tax cuts exist. That benefits everybody in a very slight and immediate sort of way, but it benefits the wealthy more, and it detriments everybody who isn't wealthy in the long term, because it means cuts to public services. Does that make sense? So, I don't know. We'll see if they do the tariffs, like, at all. They might not even need to. They're calling it Liberation Day, presumably, because, you know, the shit will be liberated from the ass of the American people when they hear about the price increases from the tariffs and immediately shit themselves. I don't know. That's kind of all I can say. Like, we literally don't know if the tariffs are real, what they're going to be on. Major news outlets don't even know, which is the insane part. The Trump administration, this is why I say, like, the plan is to create confusion. Even news outlets with, like, intimate access to the White House and to, like, administration officials don't know for sure if the tariffs are even happening, and if they are, like, what is going to be tariffed and from whom. Do you think they're trying to hide the fact that they're doing it to cause the impact harder? Yes. I think that's part of this confusion, is to prevent people from realizing at least long enough that, you know, they're doing it to just own a larger portion of the economy on the other side of things. They're not very good at hiding it, but, you know, that very well could be a part of it, and I think that is a part of it. Wow, look at this. I'm looking at this chart on Reuters. The United States has a trade deficit with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I think there's 20 countries on this list, and 16 of them, these are like the most economically important countries vis-a-vis the United States, and we have a trade deficit with 16 of them. And it might sound weird at first, but that's good. That enables the United States to be powerful. Because when we're in so much debt to so many countries, like the trade deficit that we have with these countries is frequently measured in the tens or hundreds of billions of dollars, right? That's the trade imbalance that we have with most of our trading partners. At the very top is China, and in second is the European Union. You know, two biggest trading partners, we owe them a lot of money. That gives the United States a lot of economic power, because if we default on that debt, or if we were like, I don't know, we can't really pay this, then the entire world economy is fucked. That country's economy is fucked. Everybody they interact with is fucked, you know? So it's to everybody's interest that the United States basically be able to go into debt and, like, maintain that debt with a bunch of different countries. Rich realize the middle class gets better, they grow hungry for the rich. Yeah, it's what is it? I think George Orwell had, like, a really good breakdown of this, where there's, like, the low, middle, and high, or whatever the fuck. Or something like that. And it's like, the middle is gunning for the high position, the low class, like, is just like, I'm just trying to fucking make rent this month, dude. And then the high class is trying to prevent either of them from ousting them from their position, you know? And it's only when the middle class starts getting hurt that news outlets fucking take it seriously. The small capitalists, for once, are being hurt by this. And the news outlets are now, as a result, taking this more seriously. You know? Because in this project of, like, further consolidating, smaller capitalists have to be cut out of the whole equation. So the U.S. is in debt, but they have something over the loan sharks who want their money back? Yeah, basically. The U.S. is in so much debt that the loan sharks can't ask for our money back, because then that would cut off the entire trade relationship. Like, the trade relationships that the United States has rely on America being in debt to a bunch of other countries and businesses. So it is in their interest and ours that they don't ask the United States to pay up. And, in fact, that the U.S. just don't pay up at all. Yeah, it gets really complicated. A lot of this stuff sounds kind of incomprehensible, and that's because at a certain point, it really does get incomprehensible. The economy is a massive, massive web of connections, and the bottom line is that when you have such integral trade relations, it disincentivizes people from, using hard power to kill each other. That is to say, from shooting each other with guns in a war, because, like, if war breaks out, that disrupts normal trade relationships. You know? It was a vast improvement over the previous, like, geopolitical standard that led to conflicts like World Wars I and II, you know? Yeah, there's a reason this fucking topic is a field all on its own that you can get a degree in, and I do not, as much as I know, compared to, like, regular-ass people, which is a majority of the population, I don't have a degree in this. You know, my degree is in something somewhat similar, but, like, not the same field. Nice. Reminds me of this one game, trying to compare the economy to God because they're both concepts. Yeah, very nebulous concepts. The difference being that the economy is real, and it is a very, very complex set of relationships that scales both up and down, that manages the distribution of goods and services. You know? Whenever you go to the grocery store and buy shit, that's the economy. That is a very small-scale version of the economy. Whenever you decide whether to spend money or not on anything, that's the economy. When big-ass countries with millions and millions of people decide whether or not to, like, I don't know, enter such and such trade agreement or negotiate the terms of a loan or whatever the fuck, that's also the economy at, like, one of the biggest possible scales. It's like a board game, but everyone's playing it. Yeah, it is like a really, really difficult board game. Everybody's playing it at either a bigger or smaller level. And contrast to your regular board game, it also determines whether you eat and sleep at the end of the day. You know, and whether you get to have a house or like a running water and shit, but like in real life as opposed to haha fun board game. They fucking made Warhammer a real thing and called it the economy. Hell yeah. Can you imagine if Warhammer was our future? Probably not, because I'm not that familiar with Warhammer. What I know of it is that it is so dystopian that it is, like, wildly out of step even with a lot of, like, history as we're familiar with it. And that's saying something, because there's chattel slavery and debt slavery and corvée labor in our, like, history. You know? Yeah, imagine what the GOP wants to do and is currently doing, but 100 times worse. And that's Warhammer, you know? Like, think about the child labor and the sexual exploitation of children that various politicians have been caught doing, and the erasure of minorities and, like, whatever the fuck, and all the, like, mass death and destruction. And, like, multiply that by 100, and then you have something that basically looks like Warhammer. Fucking love this track, dude. Three for three, baby. I hit a banana afterwards, but fuck it. Is it me, or have you been playing this track every day? It's not just you. I actually pick this track every time. This is the one time I pick a track in the Retro Rewind Worldwide. I pick it until it gets chosen, and then I play it once, and then I don't pick it again to make sure that I'm not like that annoying asshole in the Worldwide that's doing, like, repeats all the time. But every time I do a Worldwide session, I pick this track to play it at least once. And then, like, you know, if we play it and I do well on it, then, you know, I'm happy. Even if I don't do well on it, I'm happy because it's just a really, really nice track. But now that it's gotten chosen, I will stop picking it and I'll just start going random. That's how the stream goes. This is, you know, in addition to politics, in addition to Mario Kart, this is the Dry Ruins appreciation live stream. Speaking of which, Pokemon character. This isn't. I'm not playing as a Pokemon. This is Hammer Bro from the Mario games. Oh yeah. That was Ampharos. I have Ampharos over Birdo. So when you see me driving as that yellow guy, that's Ampharos. Or if anybody else is like racing against me and doesn't have that mod, and they see me driving as Birdo, then that is like I'm playing as Ampharos on my screen. Can you imagine Pokemon with modern politics? No, I'm gonna be honest, probably not actually. No, you know what? Maybe I could. Maybe I could imagine a fusion between the Pokemon world and, like, the modern political world, and it's one where, like, Pokemon are... Like, I basically imagined that Pokemon were part of the labor movement, and there are Pokemon that, like, attend protests and shit. You know? Because in the anime and stuff, you see that, like... Even though Pokemon are only saying their name and whatever, it's clear that whatever they're saying, they're capable, like, they can understand the Pokemon trainers, and the Pokemon trainers can understand them. Like, they're communicating back and forth. Like, they know what each other are saying. So that makes me think that, like, if there was an, like, equivalent of Pokemon with the logic of modern politics or whatever, it would basically look like the world right now, but you would, in addition to having, like, people as like citizens of a country and whatever, there would also be Pokemon, and they would also be citizens. They'd have their own, like, passports and all that shit, you know? That's a pretty good time for the shock. And I got third. I want to be the shape-shifting Pokemon from Black and White. Oh yeah, Zoroark. I remember, God, Black and White was, like... Initially, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this game. It looks really cool. There were some mechanics in it that I didn't like, and actually still don't. Like the EXP scaling. But the Pokemon designs were sick, and I think that game has aged like a fine fucking wine. You know, Pokemon Black and White has aged so well. I almost wish, you know, from the perspective of art design in Pokemon, I almost wish that Pokemon had remained 2D. Because the sprite art and the way that the sprites moved in Pokemon Black and White was so cool. It was so cool. You know, whenever you sent out a Pokemon, like, you, especially if it was, like, fully evolved, if it was one of the bigger ones, like, you had a Crocodile or a Haxorus or, like, a Garchomp or something like that, you felt so cool sending that out on the field because it actually looked like it was stanced up and, like, ready to fight. And especially if you used, like, a certain move. They had, like, that was the first time they had changed up the animation style in several years. You know, the punch moves had, like, a really cool sound effect, like, and there was just a really quick animation. It was one of the fastest games to date. Like, the Gen 4 games were known for being kind of slow, and then Black and White basically sped up the pace. Oops. Ow. Remember, yeah, that's another thing I really like. Pokemon Black and White introduced the thing where, depending on the weight of a Pokemon, they would hit the ground harder. Like, you know, if it was a really light Pokemon, there would just be a light little tap when they hit the ground. But then if you had, like, a heavier Pokemon, there'd be an audible thud, and for the really heavy ones, you'd hear boom, and then, like, the ground, there would be particle effects. 2D, like, animation for, like, smoke being kicked up, or dirt being kicked up when they landed on the ground. It was one of the coolest things I had ever seen. And I think it legitimately gave the Pokemon a sense of weight. And I actually think that no game since then has done that as well as Black and White and Black and White 2. You know? Oh, no. Imagine how disorienting it would be to have a Pokemon summoned out of nowhere. That would probably be pretty, like... I actually think that if the Pokemon world... One of the underestimated ways in which the Pokemon world kind of doesn't make sense is that, like, imagine somebody just sending out a Pokemon from a Pokeball, and, like, there being Pokemon trainers just, like, as a thing that kind of happens. You know, it's basically like everybody's concealed carrying all the time, you know? Like, I don't know who the fuck is gonna, like, basically pull one out and like, send out a Pokemon, and it's like an oh shit moment, you know? Oh no! Rip. Probably gonna get 4th. Yeah. That's basically America. Yeah, what I'm saying is, you don't want that. You don't want literally everybody to be strapping, and you don't know what they have, right? What I would rather have is actually the Pokemon world that looks more like the modern world, where, you know, Pokemon aren't in Pokeballs. Maybe Pokeballs do exist, and it's actually like an apartment inside there, so that, like, everybody can live in a Pokeball. Congratulations, we've solved the housing crisis. Everybody gets their own, like, 2-bedroom apartment or some shit. But the point being that, like, Pokemon are basically out and about on the same terms as humans. You know? Yeah, random 10-year-old has the fucking god of the skies as a pet. You just, like, some kid is like, hey kid, you wanna, you know, like, do you wanna have a Pokemon battle? He sends out a Rayquaza, you're like, oh, I might actually die. I always wonder, can you trap a person in a Pokeball? I think it's implied that, like, in the games, it's implied that people in Pokemon are, like, really, really similar. So I think, yes, you actually could, probably. Everybody becomes a trainer and makes 6 figures. Or more ideally, you don't even need to make 6 figures, because you can get a Pokeball for, like, $5. And there you go, that's your 2-bedroom apartment for $5. Maybe it costs $20 if you're getting, like, a luxury ball or something. World domination? True. Yeah, imagine the country that discovers that shit, like, instant, complete, like, world domination, one world government. You know, we're all speaking the language of whatever country came up with that shit first. If Pokemon were like superheroes, the society would collapse. I didn't buy Pokemon Rebelling or Power Imbalance. You can think of it a little bit like mutants from X-Men or something like that. I don't know. Pokemon have pretty similar powers. I feel like the stuff like mind control would be pretty frowned upon, you know? But, like, you think about some Pokemon moves, it's like, oh, Ice Punch, Fire Punch. I can punch people. I don't have like fire or ice in my fists, but I can punch somebody. That's still against the law. You know, the Pokemon moves, Bite and Crunch. I can bite people. I choose not to because, you know, I don't feel like it, but that's also against the law. A little like humans, but better. Oh, they made that a double trick ramp. Nice. Pokemon activate their own bank accounts. I'm gonna go with yes. But, it's also possible that there's, like, a fucking... I have no doubt that there's, like... Even though I said that, like, Pokemon being brought into the modern world would probably be better, like, in terms of, like, how society looks, that's a better society than just the Pokemon world directly, like, one-to-one translated. It's still not great, so I imagine there'd be some... You know how, like, women weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts without their fucking husband's permission until the 70s? I I feel like there might be something similar with Pokemon, where it's like, oh yeah, Pokemon like didn't have the same rights until like the 1970s or 80s or something like that. Because remember, like, you know, real world's still pretty fucked up. And that's putting it lightly. Oh no. It broke. The red shell broke. It's showing like a bunch of media that the Pokemon are sentient. Yeah, that's what I meant earlier when like clearly Pokemon are sentient and intelligent, as are animals in the real world. But like there's also the distinct factor that in the anime and whatnot, the trainers in Pokemon are shown to not just understand that each other are intelligent, but to be able to like talk to each other and they understand what they're saying, which means that like there's a coherent language there, you know? And that's why I think that. That's why I think that, like, if you were to, like, oh, what if Pokemon existed in the real world? I don't know. They'd probably be going on strike with workers at, like, a fucking auto manufacturing plant. I don't know. They'd be going on strike with the longshoremen. They'd be struggling to make rent in New York City. I don't know. That's probably, like, if Pokemon were in the real world, fucking Nidoking would be working his day job, coming home to his studio apartment, and being, like, really exasperated when he looks at his rent bill and sees that it's, like, $3,000 a month. Snorlax as your CEO. I feel like Snorlax would be better than a normal CEO because Snorlax, zero shot that Snorlax has the energy to like do some fucking heinous union busting shit, you know? Although, I mean, to be fair, it's not like CEOs of big companies do that much anyways. It's kind of like a superficial position, so I have a feeling it probably wouldn't be that different from having anybody else or any other Pokemon as your CEO. What if Mario Kart was the real world? I'll get back to you on that. Well, actually, no, wait. I can tell you this for sure. If Mario Kart was the real world, I would actually enjoy driving in real life, but I don't. Like, I fucking live in the DC area. Driving is hell. I don't need that shit. Especially when there's, like, bike paths nearby. All the officers would be Machamps, yeah. Live under a monarchy? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Mushroom Kingdom. That means probably I'd have to go to Japan to do any Mario Kart shit, right? Because Japan still has, like, a royal family and stuff. There are plenty of countries that are, like, liberal democracies or whatever, but then they have, like, the royal family. They're just kind of there. The only country that really makes a huge deal out of it is Britain. You know? Pokemon universe, power imbalance relationships would be a nightmare. They'd be everywhere. Maybe. I don't necessarily think that's I don't think that's necessarily true for every Pokemon, but I guess, yeah, I could see that definitely being the case between Pokemons and humans. And then also, like, it is kind of weird to think that, like, the type chart could determine, like, whether there's social taboos for which Pokemon can or should be in relationships with each other, you know? I don't know. We got, oh yeah, we got Mario Kart World coming up soon. What if that means characters spawn in real-life places and whatever damage is caused on the racetrack stays? They wouldn't do that. That's like... wildly uncharacteristic for a Mario Kart game. Blowing people up. Yeah, if you get blue shelled in the game, your house blows up in real life. Me pulling a blue shell, knowing that I'm about to kill some poor kid in first place in a rain of hellfire who probably has school tomorrow. About the Pokemon would make for fascinating media. That is true. I honestly, I actually do want to see, now that I've like talked about this. This was the subject of that essay that I talked about the one time that I was really proud of and got an F and I had to rewrite it. Where like I do genuinely want to see a media portrayal of Pokemon basically in the 21st century dealing with economic problems that we all also have to deal with, you know? Like, the closest we got was, what, Detective Pikachu? And that's hardly what I would call, like, the thing that I was, like, thinking about, you know? Like, that's not exactly what I'm thinking about here. Everybody would be scared to talk to psychic types ever. Yeah, true. I feel like if there's any, like, change in the class dynamic, I feel like there'd be a disproportionate amount of psychic types at the, like, top stratum of society, you know? Because of, like, mind control and shit. And then also, like, the like, attraction standards would be very skewed in favor of psychic types and fairy types and, like, water types. Basically, what I'm saying is that, like, if you were to take Pokemon into real life, all of the types that are currently meta would also be the most, like, sexually attractive types in real life, because they'd be like, I will snap my fingers and you will come instantly. You know? Flashback. Yeah, the Vaporeon meme, but, like, real. Ow. I deserve that mega for what I'm currently talking about, but I'm not going to stop talking about it. Juan Blue Shell. Okay. Shoutouts to Jim for getting owned by the same banana as me. Imagine the beauty standard propaganda. Oh god, it'd be fucking impossible. Even more impossible than, like, current beauty standards. Like, yeah, simply train your psychic powers to manipulate the other person into thinking that you are a perfectly round ass cheek or something. And they... It's like, the fuck? I can't do that. Dating in that universe would be a nightmare. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's already a nightmare because there's so much, like, fucking America is so shit-ass designed for, like, people maintaining any kind of relationship, romantic or otherwise. Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see the movie or whatever about, like, Pokemon existing in a real world, not just in a fantastical sense, but literally, like, what if you had a late stage capitalist world that is also, like, Pokemon are inhabitants of this world. They're citizens that have to worry about, like, real shit. We end up genociding psychic types out of fear. Maybe. That's possible. But maybe, you know what? Maybe not. Because psychic powers doesn't always mean they're, like, super hyper intelligent or whatever, or, like, genuinely an existential threat. Sometimes it just means, like, they get really bad headaches, and, like, maybe if they're really mad at you, you could get a headache. If they're, like, if they can't control themselves, right? It's like they psychically punch you as opposed to being able to physically punch you. You know? Like, you can always just not punch somebody. So possibly. The only Pokemon I would legitimately be afraid of, like, from the psychic types, in that they might just become a genocidal maniac, is, like, Alakazam or something. I don't know. There's some really goofy shit in the Pokedex, but like I feel like there's enough of that you could probably work around to make it so that like, oh yeah, some of the like maybe some of the legendary Pokemon are religious figures that aren't actually real or something like that. And then like most of the non-legendary Pokemon are real, but are like, you know, maybe their dex entries refer to them in a like or like religious deities more so, and like the non-legendaries are like their dex entries would refer to them in a more primal state when like we hadn't fucking created societies yet or something. Yeah, you could make the Pokedex about like famous Pokemon. No. Dang. Pokemon as a religion? I mean, yeah. They kind of make reference to that in Pokemon, you know? Ooh. The height difference between Pokemon is ginormous. Yes, the height difference does have to be like that has to be part of the thing that you address in order to bring Pokemon into the real world. But I think you could actually do that, considering that like in the recent Pokemon games, particularly, it's shown that like the height that you see in the Pokedex is not their one size fits all height. You know, like they're not all the same size. Some of them are different sizes. Like, you could have a really big Pikachu, and you could have a really small Snorlax, and stuff like that. It would make it better, interesting story, imagine characters scared to talk to big things. Yeah, there would definitely be some of that. Look, I've kind of understated some of the complexities of there being a real-world Pokemon kind of media or setting. But there would definitely be racism and genocide and shit in the history of like a society that includes both humans and Pokemon. Like racism against certain Pokemon types or certain Pokemon species, like quote unquote species or whatever. Ow. Ow. Holy shit. Ow. Psychic might just get profiled. Yeah. Like, you know, certain types of like poison and dark types would get disproportionately, and maybe psychic types would get like disproportionately racially profiled or some shit like that. That gets into like pretty grim territory with all the shit that's like messed up about the world. All right, cool. No, didn't get a box. It's like human height. Some it's average, but some are bigger, some are smaller. Yeah, kind of. I like that. I need a box here. Yeah, Ash's Charizard was a lot smaller than other Charizards. I remember that about the early days of the anime, which is strange because they hadn't introduced that yet. So as a kid, I was like, why is that one smaller? Shit ass luck on that corner. Okay. That's an okay shock for me, I think. Getting an item here, that's good. Almost got him. That would have been sick. I'm trying to date a certain type of Pokemon because of a kink. Yeah. Okay, one thing is absolutely for sure. The Vaporeon meme would still exist in the world where Pokemon do exist in the real world, as opposed to the world where, like, they don't. One of the constants between the world that we're living in, the world where, like, there are Pokemon also living in society with people, is that the Vaporeon meme exists in both of them. There you go. I didn't know this. I'm looking back at this Reuters article. It's been a little while. I didn't know this, but it makes sense. Most countries have small amounts of tariffs on other countries, including the US. I guess it's just like, that's just a product of the economy being really fucking complicated, you know? Nice going, geniuses. Is that shortcut even real? Oh no! What I was really hoping would happen is that all three of those green shells would clash with each other and neither of us gets hit, so then I could be like, whoa, that was cool. But then that didn't happen because I got hit. I didn't even talk shit and I still got hit. SMH. Sorry, can you imagine how expensive evolution stones would get? Yeah, they'd probably be, yeah. It'd be like the fucking, if HRT was legal and normalized. Hey, here's actually something that might be a lot better about the Pokemon world as opposed to this, like, shit-ass, like, normal shit-ass world, is that I feel like trans issues would not be, like, it would be literally impossible to center trans issues and to try to get away with the whole trans people are unnatural, like, degenerates and affronts to God. Because, like, Pokemon evolutions are pretty much just that, you know? You know? Oh, nice. I dodged the shock. Oh, shit. Get fucked up with the whole race into win because of a blue shell on the last turn. True combo. Probably actual Pokemon universe that can change your sex. Yeah, there's a Pokemon in the games that can even do that. Azurill and Marill. I don't know if you guys know about this, but Azurill and Marill have different in the Game Boy Pokemon games. So this isn't even like they hadn't even invented trans people yet. They didn't even invent woke yet. They had different like male female ratios or whatever, so it was possible that you could get you could catch an Azurill or hatch one from an egg, and then it evolved and it became a male Meryl as opposed to a female Azurill. I remember this. Yeah. I learned about this back in the Chugga-Conroy days. Long time ago. Probably 10, 15 years ago. You know, before everybody discovered that he was a huge creep and also into foot stuff. Evolution would definitely be connected to masculinity. Yeah, the masculinity, and I feel like also like this gets into the weeds, but if Pokemon version of Nietzsche exists, he would be all about the evolution, that you must exercise your will to power, Sigma grind set, get the Firestone, and fucking evolve into the majestic Arcanine you were always meant to be, or something. You know? You haven't used the Thunderstone yet? Blue-pilled cuck. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Somebody's gonna hit that, maybe? Or not. Okay. Sounds like you're such an entertainer. Exercise for not wanting to? What do you mean? Oh, like, yeah, like non-evolved Pokemon would be treated like minorities or something. That's another thing. I feel like, you know, smaller Pokemon and like non-evolved Pokemon would be fucking treated like kids or something. They're like dog. You know, I could see that happening for sure. Sick, nasty red shell dodge. Foot 9-bit from Family Guy, but in real life. I haven't watched enough Family Guy to know what that's about. Or to know the reference there. And I win. Some Pokemon are trying to take evolution blockers. We have to put a complete and total ban of Everstones until we can figure out what the hell is going on. By which I mean, keep the unevolved Pokemon submissive and capturable so that we can stuff them in the Pokeballs for our own usage. Wait, except that doesn't work because everybody would be living in Pokeballs. Fuck! But yeah, I see what you're getting at. I'm 40. Oh, yeah. Not I'm 4'9", I'm 49. Yeah. Herbert the pervert goes up to the guy thinking he's a kid, turns around and says, I'm 49. Yeah. I think I know what that is, yeah. Was supposed to be treated like slavery in that universe? Maybe. I mean, it would either be that or everybody lives in a Pokeball. Because it's like, if the Pokeball is like an apartment on the inside, then everybody would be living in one because it's so easy to have that be the housing solution. Or if that's not that, if it's like a small like capsule or whatever, then it would be like if you are arrested and you go to prison, you get put in a Pokeball. You know? And it would be like a symbol associated with slavery. Like how shackles are nowadays. But we still use shackles for prisoners. Imagine the prison torture in that universe. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it'd be pretty bad. Ah, damn it. Hit the Monty Mole. This universe we're creating sounds so fascinating and interesting. Yeah, that's why I said I would genuinely like to see this be adapted to like a movie or like a show or something. Seriously. Meow or never. Nice tag. Look out, Chairman Meow. Get down, Mr. President. Okay. Oh, man. Dang. I didn't even see that coming. I would have definitely, like, if I was in his position, I would have got fucking obliterated by that fake item box. People are going to take the shortcut here. Yeah, okay. Okay, he didn't get hit by the red shell, but the effect is basically the same. That was kind of a wacky sequence to navigate. Okay. Oh, okay. Red shell slash blue shell incoming. I'm predicting this. Or not. Or I could just win. Cool. Thank you. For certain types of Pokemon, it'd be a nightmare to get a job. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of implied by certain Pokemon potentially being ethnic minorities. Part of what makes people ethnic minorities is that they live on the margins of society. It's harder for them to participate in any meaningful way, be that politically or economically, you know? You never really have a dynamic where somebody is an ethnic minority, but they don't necessarily have a harder time getting a job than somebody who's not. Right? Like, does that make sense? Came up with an entire storyline involving a Star Wars What If series, new trilogy, and a reboot from gooning over Peyton List playing as Sith Lady. True. Imagine Pokemon parents getting the cops called on them because their kid doesn't look the same even more in that universe. Yeah, it's like if you have adoptive parents or something, they get the cops called on them all the fucking time, or if you get like a surrogate. Or if you're like or just if you're an ethnic minority. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. How like Pokemon in the Pokemon like breeding logic or whatever, if the two parents are like different Pokemon, then it's the Pokemon will only look like one of them and not like the other one. Yeah. That too. Dang, I'm building a pretty good lead. And there it goes. I'm a genius! You'll see that shit? Clip that later, future me. Oh, whoever used that shock is a genius. So lucky. That was bad luck complemented by skill to take advantage of the situation. You know, it was really bad luck that the shock happened there because, like, I had no item and there's a red shell coming for me. My item got shocked out of me and it was in a bad position for me to, like, use it to block the red shell, right? I had to stand still mini turbo and, like, physically move laterally to make it so that the red shell would run into it. I feel so fucking smart for, like, making that split-second decision-making. And I'm just gonna get blue-shelled for my troubles. They almost got me! Holy shit. This race has been, like... This is probably the best race of the session, and I'm likely going to only get second. Narrowly escaped death several times. Damn. See, that goes to show that the better player doesn't always win, and sometimes that's fine, actually. Holy shit. What Pokemon would you want to be in that universe? That's a really good question. Ooh, I don't know. I could take the Furbait answer and say Lucario or Zoroark or something. Because that'd be cool. But I'm not entirely sure. There are so many Pokemon, and I like a lot of them. I think they're very cool. You know, big fan. Big fan of that. That universe would be so kink positive, it wouldn't be funny. Yeah. That's potentially one of the upsides of like Pokemon existing in that universe, is that it's possible there's a much better understanding of sexual, like, preferences being different, and like a better understanding of transhumanism as a concept, where like you know, you can transition to another, like, genre of person or being if you want, and like that would be fine and stuff like that. Did I just miss the boost panel entirely? That's kind of goofy. Shoutouts to Tonsi, the butt of the joke, I guess, this time. Yes, didn't want to. Oh no, we went for the same box and he got it and I didn't. Oh no, no. Okay, all right. I'm not gonna even stand still, mini turbo. Yeah, I'm just gonna use these. Knew I wasn't getting that item. Give me that box. Okay. Very tight 4th place. You wouldn't have to worry about cars being everywhere. That's true. That's so true. I didn't even think of that. Now I wish we were living in that world. God damn. Unironically, if automobiles were never or are never a necessity in a world where Pokemon exists, the world might be substantially better if you have the same underlying material and political logic, but you just add Pokemon into the mix. Flying Dodrios for travel. Yeah, how the fuck does Dodrio even do that? What, his head just does that? Or something? Like what? Yeah. I mean, we have like, you know, there are people whose job it is to be bus drivers or car, like Uber drivers or taxi drivers or something like that. It's by no means a stretch to imagine transportation as an industry being staffed by Pokemon whose job it is to like ferry people around from place to place, right? You know, like that's a real industry. Slower Pokemon might not be favored. That's true. It's possible that like there's like a priority of speed. You know what? It also could be. I could see like for Pokemon being of different speeds, they could be used for different kinds of transportation. Like commuters would be on the faster, like the faster Pokemon with like higher base speed or whatever would be reserved for like more urgent settings, you know, and stuff like that. I don't know how I very briefly won that, like, jockeying for position. I don't know how that works. That, you know what that is right there? That is mock bike privilege, motherfucker. Flame runners cannot do that. Must have gotten somebody with that, no? Oh, that Daisy is right next to me. Did I get him? Yes! They got both of us! That's actually sick. Tobey Maguire stream. Yeah, fucking, like, so you see a Dodrio flying, and my honest reaction to that information, cut to fucking Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2. No, I meant to hold that out, but I guess that's not something you can do in this, like, distribution pack. I meant to wait for them to... Oh, wait, no, the blue shell is actually going. It's actually going to hit him. Okay. All according to plan, I guess. You're going to get hit? Maybe not. They had to take the long route, though. I caught up to them for that. Mock Bike privilege, my acceleration and handling is better. I ascended 3 spots from just that shock. That's crazy. That right there is why I argue that the Mach Bike is top tier online. And why, like, even if Flame Runner might be better in time trials, that Mach Bike is genuinely a better vehicle. So weird. Found the gold miner ideas. Yeah, that's true. There's some small shit in there that's like really good. All right, it's about 2 hours now, so I'm gonna hang it up. Pokemon that only have paws and don't have hands would be such a minority. Oh, that's true. That's something that I would that you could that I could very easily foresee being a big problem. Kind of like, you know, it would kind of be like a quote-unquote disability or whatever. Just in the sense that, like, it makes it more difficult to physically do certain things. You know, kind of like having crutches or being in a wheelchair or whatever. You know, there'd have to be, like, accommodations and stuff. Which, again, not like a huge problem in and of itself. We have stuff like the American Disabilities Act. Like, there are laws in the real world to account for people who have physical, like, impediments. But I could see that very easily being an axis around which the eugenicists, like, a line and be like, this society should be for hand-havers only. You know, why would we want to, like, accept people who have paws in society? You can't even jonk it efficiently. It's crazy. Yeah. Yes, notably psychic types probably wouldn't have that issue. Based on how ableist the universe is, yeah. Well, I mean, we're assuming the same political and material logic, so it would be about the same level of ableism in a systemic sense, which means that the accommodations, if they do exist, almost certainly are going to fall short in a number of areas. The difference is how vitriolic on an interpersonal level it is, which I would assume it would not be very, like, not super awful, you know? All right. That was a good stream. I I think I like for most of that stream, I think I raced out of my mind. Our Pokemon story would be one of the most leftist stories I can think of. That's cool. Yeah, the main character. It'd be like a slice of life where, you know, you're just trying to fucking make rent and make dinner. You know? I am going to... who do I want to raid? You know what? Cody Schwab is hot off of his win at Battle of BC... Or, not his win, his second place at Battle of BC 7. He had a very impressive showing. Zane won Battle of BC 7. He fucking swept. Funnily enough, I mixed up Battle of BC 7 and Battle of BC 6, which happened last year, and Cody did win that one. I'm going to raid Cody Schwab. His stream is titled Talking Battle of BC. Playing question mark? Maybe. And the thumbnail is him playing Melee, so I'm assuming he is playing Melee. So enjoy Cody Schwab. The live stream on YouTube on my Remember playlist. Yeah, all my live streams do go onto YouTube as unlisted videos, which means if you have the link or if you find the playlist, they're accessible publicly. Although occasionally there's a stream that's so good that I make it public. Raid Cody Schwab. There we go. This might even be one of those. Who knows? All right. In the meantime, enjoy Cody Schwab, runner-up at Battle of BC 7. Again, very impressive bracket run. Lost only to Zane, I think. Yeah, best player in the world of 2023 and 4, I think. I don't know. It might have been somebody else. I don't give a shit about rankings. The man's good at Melee. He plays Fox. Enjoy.